This is going to be a little chaotic because I have a lot of ground to cover. This accessory information, a lot of this written stuff, it's there for you to come back and pause if you want to. You can follow the screen, but it's more important to listen to what I'm saying. I didn't want to make this discussion 2 hours long. But there's a lot to cover because a lot of the things we think about vitamin D are known to be false. The take-home message is that you can spend this summer making yourself less susceptible to respiratory complications and death if you get COVID-19 next fall or next winter. If you spend that time taking oral vitamin D, you're making yourself more susceptible. And this part we can literally know. But I also want you to understand how crazy it is to assume that people benefit from high vitamin D levels when they avoid the sun. This is unscientific nonsense. We can trace the problem back to the early 20th century, when a few bad experiments had us believe vitamin D was a vitamin instead of a steroid hormone. I wouldn't have anything to share with you here if we had first discovered that the body made this steroid in response to sun exposure. Oh neat, we have a really powerful steroid here. Clearly we're supposed to get these effects in proportion to sun exposure. What is sunlight itself doing to warrant these effects? Yeah, it would have taken a lot of time because we didn't have a lot of technology back then, but people would have gotten there. It's just that generations have been misled by this false label. I've already posted videos explaining how people are like plants, that we use sunlight. Let's start there. Plants make oxygen. Can you and I make oxygen? No, but we can definitely use this plant thing to get oxygen to cells starving for it in COVID-19. What we have here is most useful as an anti-aging therapy. How can an anti-aging effect save your life in COVID-19? Because you're dying from premature aging, red blood cell aging to be specific. Basically, these cells are just being ripped apart because every time they go through the lungs, they're getting attacked. The sun fixes that through photoferrokinesis. There aren't many diseases we can treat with sunshine and smiles. This is one of those rare diseases. That's one of the reasons coronavirus is getting taken to Pound Town in places with tons of sunshine. But it's important that we differentiate vitamin D from sunlight because they aren't different, they're opposites. And the better the sun is at preventing something, at fixing something, the better vitamin D is at making it worse. It's got to be obvious to you already that African Americans get less photoferrokinesis when they go in the sun. Are there advantages to dark skin in this condition? Absolutely. They're not being utilized. What I'm saying here is that vitamin D is making them look unequal, inferior in this disease. Vitamin D is being recommended to them more, and they do not have the same ability to compensate for the problems caused by vitamin D. It's no coincidence that vitamin D is more toxic to them. The pigmentation itself alters the way that light operates on our red blood cells. This is what affects the iron withholding we need to beat COVID-19. We got to get these people off vitamin D so they can see their true potential. The darker your skin is, the less photoferrokinesis you get. What do you get in return? Hydroferrokinesis. It's crazy. This ability to move iron around with light, it robs us of the ability to move iron around with water. The darker your skin is, the better flexibility you get out of your red blood cells when you move around. There's really no way to explain this in a short manner of time. I'll just say that photoferrokinesis deprives our body of something called membrane buckling. I really believe that mortality should be about equal in this disease if we can get that going. We just have to be using our natural advantages. Moving around helps everyone, but vitamin D is negating that signal. It's telling the body, reverse exercise. That's the signal. It's reverse exercise. I extend that declaration to the arena of weight loss. Sunlight burns calories because it brings with it cell proliferation. Vitamin D is known to bring in toxins which cause weight gain in a lot of ways. Sun exposure has the opposite effect. The sun gets these toxins out of our body. Fitness training blocks their entry. If you're not taking vitamin D anyway. If you are, you get that direct toxin boost. But it's not these supplement muffin tops which have me on the brink of a nervous breakdown. We need red immune cells that can hold on to iron, that don't fall apart. It's delivering the opposite. There's a lot of controversy about how much vitamin D people should have, but there is no controversy about how much vitamin D people have to have. It's zero. It's not a vitamin, and it's not like the other steroids. People claiming we need it are too poorly informed to understand the difference between a hormone and a receptor. The absence of the vitamin D receptor always causes problems. The absence of vitamin D does not. We can get by with nothing. We're only supposed to have it when we go in the sun. It doesn't really occur in the diet, in nature. We are fortifying our foods because of a mistake made almost 100 years ago. We named it a vitamin, and tons of people got interested in selling it. They discovered great things about sun exposure, and then used that information to drive people away from the sun. They even started telling us we needed vitamin D to get enough calcium. Okay, it can only hold you up if you want to get more calcium into the body. Let me explain. It has a tremendous effect on heavy metal absorption. That's because of where it works in our small intestine. Calcium absorption is passive. You don't need active transport. If you give someone with a vitamin D level of 0 a good amount of calcium, they're going to absorb it just fine. If you compared their absorption to a person who just took 100,000 international units of vitamin D, the difference would be immeasurable. So why is it holding us back? Because if you are taking vitamin D, it's a problem to keep adding calcium. A non-user can fearlessly ingest calcium. Vitamin D seeds the body with something called nucleation centers. Remember I said that vitamin D and sun exposure were opposites? Okay, that applies to mineralization too. If you're taking a bunch of calcium and vitamin D, you're not hurting yourself by putting extra calcium in. You're really not putting any more in at all. What you are doing is mineralizing yourself in places where you don't want minerals, but not enough doctors notice the significance. They have so many physicians confused, it's unreal. The best doctors out there, most of the things they know about vitamin D are untrue. This BS just sticks with you unless you keep learning about it. They did a really interesting study about what doctors retain from medical school. Apparently every doctor in America can remember that scorpion stings can be a cause of pancreatitis. Good luck finding an American physician using that information this year. If we could teach these people who are doctors, okay, everything you know about vitamin D, it's the opposite. What these people are saying, look at what it does. It's not even bad science causing this problem, because bad science is still science. This isn't science. Vitamin D people are trying to thread a needle which cannot be thread. There are white women in San Diego, California taking oral vitamin D because they don't realize it is worse for their waistline than sun exposure. At the same time, we have minorities having 5,000 or more international units recommended to them, even though they are more susceptible to the internal problems caused by vitamin D. And it's hard to investigate all of that unless a lot of people are dying prematurely, like they are. That thing which makes vitamin D such a big long-term problem, the fact that all these toxins are indestructible, well, that makes it easy to assess them after the fact. You know, we don't have any idea about the cholesterol status of 15th century Pecos Indians, but it's easy to determine their cadmium problem. And what I'm saying here is that light intensified transcutaneous mineral excretion, LITME, could be a real asset. What's the key word there? Intensified. The integument is the principal excretory site for these heavy metals brought into the body by vitamin D. Now, endogenous vitamin D, the kind we make in the skin, doesn't have the same ability to boost toxin absorption. The body isn't fighting a big problem when it goes out in the sun, but it gets big time assistance because these heavy metals concentrate in the skin, and the main way we get rid of them is through skin exfoliation. Our expired skin cells are like little trash bags. They haul off all that stuff we would never want. When you go out in the sun, you start losing more cells. More cells, more metals. And there's good reason to believe that the cells you're losing contain a higher average of toxins. Now, in a fair-skinned person, a lot of these toxins brought in by vitamin D, they're funneled through the skin, even by visible light. This LITME no doubt ages their skin, meaning that oral vitamin D ages their skin, but the benefit is slower internal aging. Really dark-skinned people actually have an advantage with LITME because they don't have to worry about skin aging. They can still get what they need. And melanin actually plays a role in this process. They're making it in the wrong place. Fair-skinned people, even their melanin is better at counteracting vitamin D toxicities. But like I said, even the darkest people out there can pull this off if they get enough sun exposure. So each summer, if you have dark skin, you can really unburden your body of a lot of these toxins which age every organ in the body. And that's neat because we don't need it all the time. That's why vitamin D isn't that bad right away. This stuff is a long-term problem, not a short-term problem. Better a respiratory pandemic than a cancer pandemic. And dementia pandemic on top of a mental health crisis? I don't really know how else to put it, but the world has lost its mind. We should have experts coming out saying, okay, we're looking at vitamin D. From a biological standpoint, it does everything we do not want and more. Inorganically, the situation is even worse. Maybe we can return to this practice once COVID-19 disappears, but there is no wisdom in using an immune-boosting steroid to treat and or prevent death when thousands of people are dying from boosted immunity. It's like these people just assume vitamin D does something to treat this virus by mechanisms unknown. You know, it's a situation where Gandhi gets the job done, and people are voting for Hitler. How do we slap billions of people in the face all at once? Toxicology. When people see these long-term users with 100 or more times historical baseline on cadmium, lead, etc., they're going to go, whoa, maybe reverse sunshine is not for me. We can get some environmental toxicologists interested in this stuff. That shouldn't be hard. They love this kind of thing. And I think it's going to wake people up to the fact it has never been more important to avoid oral vitamin D. All this agriculture, our topsoil is increasingly contaminated with metals, and vitamin D pumps them into the body more effectively than anything. How are we going to compare these toxicities to sun-worshipping COVID patients if sun worshippers don't die from the disease? We aren't. We don't need to. We just need a net assessment. When we look at a living person, we're limited by the fact that our measurement is a product of how many metals they have, as well as their ability to let go of those metals. Vitamin D makes us hang on. You know, they used to say about appendicitis that if 1/4 of the people you cut open weren't clean, without appendicitis I mean, then you weren't being diligent enough. We're talking about acutely ill patients. With vitamin D, we're applying this appendicitis model to everyone. The sun tries to demineralize us. We have to have vitamin D when we go in the sun. We don't necessarily need it for healthy bones unless there is a problem. It's therapeutic rather than essential. Long-term use also worsens bone health through the amassment of osteotoxins. We know that bone mineral density is inversely correlated with the status of heavy metal intoxication. And yet we still give vitamin D to prevent bone disease. When sunlight and vitamin D come together, you get much better overall health, especially bone health. Maybe these pediatricians will start saying to themselves, yeah, we're always going to be able to treat rickets with vitamin D because the solution to pollution is dilution. The toxins these kids are accumulating are being diluted by growth. But if I'm going to first do no harm, it starts with not poisoning all of my patients to prevent a rare and treatable condition. I mean, if doctors sit down and think about this, chronic heavy metal intoxication plus unwarranted innate immune deviation, does that take a heavy toll? Did World War II take a heavy toll on European infrastructure? Come on. It ages the bejesus out of us. Thank goodness we just barely started doing this. Several decades of it would be unsustainable. You know, it really isn't greed driving this. These vitamin D people mean well. They believe in their product. That's the problem. Each one of us can only be skilled at a limited number of things. These guys are experts at observational analysis. They did a bang-up job proving that people who went in the sun and never took oral vitamin D were altogether healthier. And now they're trying to tell everyone that people who do the opposite of what I just said will see the same benefits. Well, guess what? That's not going to happen. These are not cause and effect personnel, and they have a lot of doctors listening. The other problem is that you have to understand a lot about iron to understand anything about vitamin D. What percent of vitamin D regulated genes are influenced by iron status at the cellular level? 100. I'm not an expert in vitamin D, but I'm telling you right now, I know enough about iron to know that you need to be asking the iron experts about this steroid. Not one of them is going to come in and say, you guys are right. Human beings are backwardly engineered Cartesian machines. I too understand the problem that carcinogens lower vitamin D levels, and I don't see a problem adding more carcinogens to the body, which will also lower vitamin D levels. We can just keep raising vitamin D levels artificially. Good grief. What is every iron expert going to say? Listen, the body doesn't throw iron around like this all willy-nilly. Your steroid is manhandling the master regulator of iron homeostasis. What this tells us is that sunlight does something fundamental.
A hallelujah in the presence of my enemies. I raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me.